Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Internationalie podcast. Before we start, let me talk a little bit about the podcast. So, the Internationalie podcast is going to be a space where different international students, prospective ones, as well as current international students, could get a glimpse into the life of international students in the US or abroad. This week, I'm joined by my very dear friend Sorenie. Welcome to the show, Sorenie.
Thank you for having me, Ruth.
Yeah,
We
of
finally made
course.
it happen.
I know, finally, right? So before we delve into our conversation, let me talk a little bit about you. So Sorenie is originally from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. She completed her undergraduate education at Bryn Mawr College in mathematics and economics. After graduating in 2020, shout out to the class of 2020. You graduated during COVID. So she worked at Yale University as a research assistant. She's currently an economics PhD student at Northwestern University. Would you like to add more to your bio?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, as the title of our episode today is Dealing with Job Search, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word job search?
The first thing that comes to my mind is my experience of going through the job search, which was, I'd say, very challenging. One of the most challenging parts of my college career was finding a job, whether that was an internship and later on finding a full-time job. So I guess that whole experience is sort of what comes to my mind.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when I also, similar to you, when I hear the word job search, I get this like anxiety when I hear about it because there's a lot of obstacles and challenges that we faced as international students trying to find an internship. But like you said, while still in college, we're supposed to do internships during the summer between our years, and then afterwards, like landing a full-time job if you want to stay in the US or like move back. It's like this really weird phase that I found myself in, a lot of international students are in. So I feel like maybe we can talk about first, like within our college years. Maybe you can share your experience, like how was it for you navigating searching for internships as an international student? What was that experience like for you?
Right. So, I guess we can start with the internship, like you said. I think one of the things that sort of threw me off about that whole process was how early on it starts. Like people start thinking about getting an internship in their first year, like the second semester of their first year. And I was still sort of like, I just got here. I'm trying to get used to things. And like, why are you thinking about jobs? Like, we just started college. But yeah, I guess like it starts so early, and like many students, especially like domestic students, come in sort of knowing what they want to do in college and like thinking about what they want to do the first summer of their college. So I think that sort of threw me off. So in the summer of my first year, I actually ended up just going home. I didn't do anything.
Oh, same. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during the summer of my second year, I had an internship in Philadelphia. The school that I went to was really close to Philly, and I was lucky enough that position, I would say, wasn't as difficult to get as a full-time position when I was applying for a full-time position.
Right.
And I think that was because I guess we can come back to this later, but I used Handshake, which is like job search site that was specific to my school, and that position was posted there, and I think that made it a bit easier for me.
Right.
So yeah, I think the first internship I did was the summer of my sophomore year, and then in my junior year it was really hard to try and find an internship, and I think I like worked on that basically throughout the year, but I didn't really find anything. I think towards the end I just decided to go home again for that summer. So I basically just had one internship the summer of my sophomore year.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Because as you were talking, I was also nodding my head because even so for the college I went to, Smith, we also had handshake, but the problem was um, so many of these opportunities were targeting domestic students and not necessarily international students, and so they didn't flag some of the opportunities. So you'd go all the way through the application process where you go at the bottom and you see, oh, we don't sponsor international students. And you're like, oh, you spent all the time and energy into like applying to this position, but then you're not qualified. So I think so for me, my experience, so first year, like you said, I went home because it had been 3 years in the US, and I was like, this is enough.
I've had enough.
I need some Ethiopian air. So I'm very, very glad, I used the opportunity to go back home, to rejuvenate, connect with friends, family. And that summer was actually very pivotal for me because when I went back to college again, I actually changed my major and decided to because I was pre-med, and now I decided to pursue sociology and economics, similar to you, so econ. But and then the summer of my sophomore year, I actually ended up doing a research assistant position at UNC Chapel Hill. And the way I got that position was actually I reached out to the professor and emailed him. And I was like, because my family was in North Carolina, so I knew I was going to stay there for the summer. And so I was like, can I intern for you, or like, can I be your research assistant? And he was like, yeah, sure. If you're here, then we could do. So I did an unpaid research assistantship for that summer. So that gave me a lot of the experience that I wanted. And, saw like he was a very good mentor of mine. So, sometimes the way you get these internships is not necessarily through a website or, like something very formal. Sometimes you just have to like search for the opportunity and reach out to the person in charge and just email them, so that's also one trick that I used. And then the summer of my junior year, I did an internship. So I did this program called the BGIA program, the Board Globalization and International Affairs program. And I heard about the opportunity through actually a career fair I attended at college. So they had a stand, and I went and talked to them. And my first question is, do you accept international students? And she was like, yeah, sure, you can apply. I was like, oh, really? So they were the only program that said yes to international students. Like I went to every single like stall, and they were like, no. So I was like, okay, this is my chance. So I applied. Long story short, I ended up doing that internship. It was in New York. So I took classes in international, relations, and then also interned at the UN. So that was like a very good experience for me, especially as an international student, considering the field I wanted to study and everything. So that was good. And then the summer senior year, I moved back to Ethiopia. That's the story.
Our backup.
Our backup is, I know, Ethiopia is always our backup. But I want to like highlight some of the things that I talked about is like, so your experience, in general, like with internships, why do you think it was difficult for you to find an internship as an international student?
Right. I think that some of the stuff that you mentioned, we can talk about when it comes to like the full-time position. I'm guessing we'll be going there. But I think one of the things that I struggled with was, like you said, like the companies that sponsor international students, especially in your junior year. So a lot of companies that hire in their junior year are those companies that will most of them at some point give out like return offers to students, and like companies that are willing to take you on as a full-time employee after graduation. And those companies, like, they don't want to train you for 2-3 years and just have you leave because you're an international student and like you don't have the work permit to continue working for them. So I think, like you said, like that was one of the biggest difficulties. And the market is also really saturated. There's a lot of competition when it comes to these jobs. Specifically, companies that hire international students for full-time are usually like the bigger companies, and they get a lot of applications from other international students or even domestic students, since they're like big, well-known companies. So there's also a lot of competition. And I think the other thing for me was like being able to balance academics, so like making sure that you're doing well in your classes, but at the same time having time to like network and like go to these career fairs, talk to people, even sending out applications itself, like sitting down and filling out an application, even that is something that takes time. So it's hard to like dedicate that amount of time when you know that, you know, like the chances are like pretty small for like one job to work out. So yeah, I think it was a lot of that. And I think towards the end of my junior year, my thing was that, you know, I'll figure this out in my senior year. Like right now, let me just like try and focus on my classes. So I sort of like gave up on it. I don't know if that was like the best decision in that moment, but that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, I think it was like the combination of those things that made it hard for me.
Right. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience, because I feel like for every international student also the experience is different, because it also depends on what field you're interested in, what your major is, right, when you're trying to search for these internships. Because a lot of like some of my friends, you know, wanted to do investment banking, so they were doing economics, and they were applying to these like big investment banking firms, and they were able to get the positions even though they were international students, right? So if you're maybe pursuing a science field, you know, finding a research assistant position for the summer might look different for you. So I feel like the major you choose, also your field, plays a big role. And I want to, you know, stress the point where you said about competition. I feel like that's the biggest thing, because as you said, it's very competitive to stand out as an international student among so many other applicants. And so what are maybe some of the things that you did to set yourself apart, to make yourself unique as a candidate when you applied for these internships?
Right. So I think that, one of the things that ended up being really important is, you know, this buzzword networking. So this is actually something that I found out from my school's career center, that about like almost 70%, I think they said, of like jobs were found through networking. So like, I don't know if that's internships or like full-time positions in general, but that was like a statistic that I got from them. And basically, when people hear networking, like I think, like you said, obviously using the resources that are provided to you by your school are really important, but also using your own personal networks, like the way that I ended up getting my like full-time position at Yale later on was actually through my sister, who had sent me the link. So like, I think that using resources, even resources that you have that aren't provided by your school, so like reaching out to people, talking to people, I think that is really important. I believe that that's one of the things that helped me find that sophomore year internship, especially because I think the company I worked for was looking to hire from the school I went to. They had like sent that like application to the school, and I think that was really important. The other thing is like, when you're applying for these positions, obviously as international students we have a lot of like restrictions. Like, I mean, sometimes we try and find roles that we think will help us remain in the US for longer, like try and work at companies that sponsor international students so we can get like a full-time position and like work for them for a longer period of time. And I think that when you're like going for those companies, trying to find what you actually want to do, and like being sure about what you want your contribution to be, because like some of the questions that they ask you is like, you know, oh, like why are you interested in our company, and like you know, like what do you want to bring here. So I think that spending some time actually like digging deep and thinking about, oh, if I were to work at this company, what is it that I want my contribution to be? And I think even when we're applying, obviously having those positions, because you know we've come to the US to study, we want to work here for some time, but also applying to positions that we feel are like the best fit for us, even though they may not be the conventional path that most other students take, or like maybe not the most lucrative path for us. But still including those applications, I think is really important. It's what I found later on is if you're actually really interested in the job, it's not that hard to prove it to someone else. But if it's not something that you really want, then you have to like,
Takes
like
a lot
really
of effort,
prepare.
right?
Exactly, like really
Yeah,
prepare in terms of like, oh, what should I say to convince them, even though I
yeah.
myself am not really convinced.
Right, right.
So yeah, I think those
Yeah.
things are important.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think from what you said, I want to highlight two things that, one is the importance of networking. And the second one is like really understanding what you want and what kind of job or internship that you really want to do. So when we're talking about networking, I feel like that's obviously like a huge buzzword, especially on college campuses. You hear it from your counselors, from the people at the career office. And I actually want to do like a separate episode about networking because I feel like it's something that's also like very, very important, but it's also very, very misunderstood. And I feel like a lot of people who may be shy or are not that confident might really be, apprehensive about the fact that, oh, how am I going to, talk to a random stranger to give me a job, But I feel
Exactly.
like even though it sounds very daunting, networking is one of the key ways in which you can land yourself a very good internship or job opportunity. And it also starts from like knowing yourself really well, because you also have to present yourself in a certain manner, in a way that you seem confident, you seem qualified to ask for that position. And you shouldn't feel afraid to like reach out to someone who might give you that opportunity. Just like what I mentioned earlier, when I reached out to the professor when I did the research assistantship, I didn't know him, obviously. I just Googled him and I found his contact and just emailed him, right? So what if I didn't do that? Then I wouldn't have any internship that summer, right? So you lose opportunities by not reaching out to people you don't know, right? So I think like as you mentioned, like networking is really, really important, especially as an international student, because you don't know like the lengths that people go to, because some people are like very, very kind, like they give you so many opportunities and accommodations and like even stipends that you might need during your summer. So really want to stress the importance of networking. And then the second one, where you say like you have to really understand what you're looking for and really know what you want to do, because I feel like that also goes with like peer pressure, because I felt that in college, where a lot of my friends were applying to these like big firms, working, and they were getting paid a lot, like even as interns, and I knew that. But at the same time, I didn't let that sway me into like applying to a position that I'm not interested in, right? So why would I do something just because someone else or like one of my friends is doing it, right? So do you agree with that, or did you also struggle like that?
Yeah, so I actually fell into that trap where I
Yeah.
did apply to those positions,
Oh
even
my god.
though
Okay.
I think it
Yeah.
like comes, one of the downsides of being an international student is there's always fear associated with the
Yeah.
decisions that we
Yeah.
make. So it's like,
Exactly.
okay, like this isn't something I want to do, but like what's gonna happen if I don't find a job, and like then what will I do, So there's that
Right.
fear component that's motivating
Yeah.
some of our decisions.
For
And I
sure.
think for me it was like, yeah, I'm not really interested in this, but if it were to work out, it might leave me in a better position. So I did apply to those jobs, and I mean, thank God that most of them didn't work out, because I'm really happy with where I am right now. But
Right.
in the
Right.
moment, it was like, this is what everybody's doing, and there's a reason why everybody's doing it. It works. If it works, it works, and if it works out for
Right.
you, it's a good path to be on. But I think it's really hard to break out of that. Like I think it's easier said than done in
Yeah.
some ways, because
Yeah.
obviously we all, if like we could want to pursue what we really want to, like what we're passionate about, but as international students we have like restrictions that are put on us, and I think it's a decision that each one of us has to make at the end
Yeah.
of the day. So I think that like one thing that I would definitely recommend is to not limit yourself in terms of the things that you apply to. Like apply
Right.
to the things that you think that you are passionate about, but also maybe include those other positions, because maybe
Yeah.
you're there and like it's not as bad as you think it's going to be, or like you don't
Right.
know. So just
Exactly.
like try and diversify as much as you can.
Yeah, that's really key, honestly, like diversifying the places that you're applying, the positions that you're applying. I think that's very, very important, because unless you put yourself out there, like no one's gonna come reach out to you and be
Yeah.
like, can you please intern for us, like you
Yeah.
have to be the one to advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
There's
Um,
actually something
yeah,
that I wanted to mention.
please do.
Yeah, like when you were talking about, like you might be shy or like you might be uncomfortable going to people and like asking these things. I think that's personally something that I
Right.
struggled with. Like, like coming from Ethiopia where, like even getting a job through someone is sort of like not something that you want to do. You just want to like
No.
send an application, like
Yeah.
just be qualified. And it
Yeah.
just felt so wrong to like go to
Right.
someone. And
Right.
then, yeah,
Right.
like, so
Right.
it was weird to me. And like we've talked about this
Mhm.
with some of my friends where it was like, it felt like cheating in some sense to like go to
Mhm.
someone and ask for something. But I think
Right.
understanding how the system here works, it's like, yeah, they have a name for it. It's like networking, and like you use it to get jobs. I was like, why should I go talk to this person and get a position when there are multiple other people applying online that might be just as
Mhm.
qualified? But I
Right.
think like understanding how
Yeah.
like the system here works and using it
Mhm.
to your advantage is, yeah, I think
Mhm.
it's really important.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Thank you for bringing that up, because I feel like, when you mentioned, your upbringing in terms of like how that affects the way you move around the world, the way,
Mm-hmm.
you interact with people. I think that plays a huge role. Because as you said, growing up in Ethiopia, I mean, we went to the same high school, so Nasser
Yeah.
too. I feel like the fact that I went there made me more confident than I would have been, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about it now.
Yeah.
And but a lot of people don't have that opportunity. A lot of people don't have the grooming that they need, or like the nurturing that they need when
Mm-hmm.
they are growing up, to be confident, to like maybe
Mm-hmm.
stand up in a crowd and talk. Those are the kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things that you develop before you go to college, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
once you have those skills, I think networking won't be as daunting to you.
Yeah.
And as you said, like, it seems like cheating. I didn't
Yeah.
think of it like that, but like, you're right, because you feel like you're like, taking like a shortcut, right,
Mm-hmm.
to the same
Mm-hmm.
position, but it's actually not. And what
Yeah.
you said about understanding the system and how it works and how it can help you take advantage of the opportunity that you're having, I feel like that's very key.
Yeah.
And what's considered the norm, back in Ethiopia might not be the same in the US, right? So I feel like that
Exactly.
also takes cultural understanding,
Yeah.
to a point where like advocating for yourself, it
Yeah.
may seem selfish or like
Yeah.
individualistic to a certain point, because
Yeah.
as Ethiopians, we're growing up, and we were taught to be,
Yeah.
community, you're
Humble
supposed to
and
like,
like,
yeah, humble,
yeah.
take care of other people, you're supposed to like think about others and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
although that is obviously good virtues to have, at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, when you're by yourself in college and trying to figure it out, I
Yeah.
feel like you need to step up your game a little bit more, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
something that definitely takes getting used to, and the
for
more
sure.
that you do it, the more comfortable you are
Yeah.
in that kind of environment. But I think
Yeah.
just accepting that like that's how things work here.
Yeah.
Like to me in the beginning it was like if I'm qualified, they'll see my application and they'll accept me.
Right.
Why do I have to go talk to them and like try and convince them? But that's
Mm,
not how like recruiting works in the
it's
US. Like they
not.
have to know,
Yeah.
like most of the time like you have to come through someone that they know, like
Yeah.
they need
Yep.
to have met you
Yep.
to hire you, because they
Yep.
get thousands of applications online, and like that's the only way they
Yeah.
can actually filter through the applications
Yeah.
that they get. So
Exactly.
like understanding that and like
Mm,
using that to your advantage early on. Like I spent a lot of time just submitting applications on LinkedIn and
mm.
Handshake for a very long time, and I'm pretty sure like nobody saw most of those applications.
Yeah. Sometimes they
Because
don't even check. That's
yeah,
true.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like I mean, for some positions they get like 2,000, 3,000
Oh my
applications, so
God.
they don't have anybody actually sitting down and reading what you submit. So like
Exactly.
it's really important to use your
Yeah.
connections, like to try and
Yeah.
get, yeah, those positions, and like to try and prove to people that you are
Mm,
qualified and like that you
yeah.
can, that you
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, honestly, like you said, like, who's gonna like sit down and read 2,000, 3,000 applications? Like, the shortcut would be, who do I know among these people? Who did
Exactly.
I meet in person? Oh, I remember this
Mm-hmm.
person. So they're more likely to
Yeah.
read your application. Yeah, for sure. That's
Ex-
completely right. Yeah. Thank you
yeah.
for mentioning that. That's very important. Um Okay, so now let's move on to like the applying to the full-time position. What was that for you? Like you're a senior, in college, trying to apply for a job. How was your experience? Let's hear it.
So yeah, it was rough. Senior year was a tough time. I think that for me, so I was in some ways pretty confused at the beginning of my senior year in terms of the kinds of jobs that I wanted. Obviously, like the majors that I had chosen limit me in some ways, but even within that, I didn't know like of a position that I thought would be like perfect for me. So I was just applying to anything and everything that I could find. And it was a very long journey. Like I had gone to like through interview steps with like multiple companies where I would like make it to the final round. Like they would like fly me out somewhere. I would do the final round interview, and then I would think, oh, like this is gonna work out, and like it never worked out. And then like I remember, and then after like winter break, COVID hit, and like all the companies froze hiring. So I was like, if I could find a job when there was no COVID, like how am I gonna find a job with COVID?
Yeah. Oh my God.
It was rough, and I think towards the end, like the way that it worked out was my sister, who was also going to college at the time, sent me an application that was posted on their like economics page, and the position was for a research assistant in development economics, which is what I am doing right now. And like I read it and I was like, this sounds just so perfect for me. Like I had written my thesis on that topic, and like you did, I actually, after seeing that application, I sent an email to the professor, and I was like, these are my qualifications. I think that I am a really good fit for this. And I was like, I would like really like to interview or whatever. And then he got back to me. I think 2 weeks later, we had a call for 15 minutes or something, and he was like, yeah, like I think you're good for this, you're like a good fit for this. And then he basically offered me the position, and this was a week before graduation. So I was literally ready to go home back to
God. Oh my God, what a story, man. Oh my God.
I know. So it was like, I mean, in hindsight now, compared to all of the other positions I had applied to, I think this was the perfect fit for me. Like even now I'm in graduate school because of that role, and like because of the research experience I had gotten there, and it's sort of reaffirmed that I do want, like this is what I want to do as a career. And I think in some ways I felt like it was some kind of divine intervention, because of all of the other positions I had applied for had worked out, and I wouldn't be where I am right now. And the way that it worked out was also like really easy compared to the other like very difficult interview processes that I had gone through. So yeah, I think it was sort of like a huge learning moment for me senior year, just in terms of like perseverance, and like having like gone through so many of these, and just like keep sending applications, keep talking to people. So and like without it not discouraging you, and like not really affecting, like it was hard, like because of COVID too. There was like other things that were going on. But yeah, I think that it was a huge learning moment for me. And yeah, like sometimes things work out in ways that you don't expect them. You don't expect them to, or like you don't foresee them to like work out in that way. And I think just like having faith in the process, and just like keep trying your best, and like something will work out, and like whatever happens, just like having that belief in yourself that you will succeed in whatever does come. And yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing that experience. Really, like honestly, like when I heard your story, I was also like reflecting. And I feel like a lot of, also some of my friends also got like positions just like you, like by reaching out to professors and talking to them. And sometimes doing the unconventional way might have bigger benefits in return, right? So you should also always look for like the different ways of doing things. For me personally, so what happened was
What happened was
right. So remember the internship that I did that summer during my junior year? So that really opened my eyes to a lot of the things that I wanted to do after college. And I knew like for what I wanted to pursue as a career, I needed international experience, right? So if I'd stayed in the US, that would limit my exposure, you know, because I'm also like interested in, you know, working in developing countries, and I feel like, you know, staying in the US wouldn't give me what I was looking for. My goal was to like go to college and graduate, but you know, long story short, I knew that summer that I wanted to go back to Ethiopia after graduation, right? So my senior year, you know, the one question that everyone would ask you, and you know, you'd get so fed up, is, so what are you doing after graduation? I was like, oh my god, can you stop asking me these questions that give me anxiety? Like, stop. And my answer literally automatically became, oh, I'm going back to Ethiopia. And then people would be so shocked, and they were like, what? Why would you go back? And I was like, and then sometimes I would not even explain to people. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll move on to the other conversation, right? Because I feel like not a lot of people, you know, would understand where I'm coming from. So I would like choose, you know, who to tell and who not to tell. But basically, so like my first, you know, my senior year, I was like, okay, I'm set. You know, I'm moving back to Ethiopia after graduation without having anything secured, you know, bear in mind. Right? Okay. So, and then during the spring semester, I saw all of my friends getting positions and saying, oh, this is what I'm going to do after graduation, blah, blah, blah. And then I also like fell into the trap of like, okay, maybe I should like apply to a few positions in the US, you know,
just to be safe.
Just to be safe, right? And then I feel like if I remember correctly, I like created accounts, you know, to like apply, you know, but I don't think I ever submitted the application. I don't think I did. But you know, that just goes to show how much I was like, you know, doubting myself. And I was like, just in case it doesn't work out. Anyways, long story short, a month after graduation, I moved back to Ethiopia. My mom moved back with me, and then I was like, okay, so now, you know, let me apply, you know. And then I was like, oh, maybe this summer, let me just enjoy it, you know. I graduated, I'm in Ethiopia. I started like
what's the rush? What's the
rush? I have the summer. It's not like I'm gonna start a job tomorrow, right? So I literally spent like the summer chilling, you know, catching up with friends, family, and it's been, you know, already like another 3 years since I came back. And so I was just like really enjoying my time. And then August comes, and then I was like, okay, now I have to be serious. And so I started applying to jobs. I kid you not, like like online applications, I feel like I applied to like 100 positions in Ethiopia, right? And some of them, you know, for me, I just graduated, so I was looking for like entry-level positions in NGOs, you know, you name it. Nothing. And I was like, wait, what? How is this possible? Like, literally, I was shocked because I took a risk, right? Like, no one told me to move back to Ethiopia. This is something I decided on my own. But what you said about like faith and like having faith in the process, I feel like that really helped, because I knew like at the end of the day, I was going to find something, even though it wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be. But anyways, I found this one internship at an NGO, and I started doing that for like 1 month. It was really great. You know, I met with a lot of people, and then you know, what, you know, about like connection. So my sister, let's talk about her sister. So she ran into someone. So she was also doing her PhD, and so she ran into someone at her college campus, and then it was a person that I really wanted to work for. And so, you know, she gave me their email address. I emailed them, and then she was like, yeah, you can come. And so I interviewed with them, and they're like, you can start tomorrow. And I was like, are you serious? So that's literally how, no, I'm not even like this. When you talk about it, it sounds very unlikely to happen, but this is literally how I secured my job. And so I started off as an intern and as an unpaid intern for like a year. And then I got promoted to a position, and I've been working there, you know, for now more than 3 years, right? So I feel like at the end of the day, like, even though it wasn't the exact way that I thought I would find a job in Ethiopia, I still ended up finding a job in Ethiopia, right? So, you know, both our stories just, you know, go to show that our methods might be different, but at the end of the day, like, you're going to find something. Like, you're not just going to be unemployed. Like, I feel like a lot of international students were like, you know, we're smart. I mean, not to like gas us up, but we are, you know, we're smart. We have all the experience we need. And we're very, you know, we have the experience of living and graduating, you know, from a country that's different. And I feel like we have a lot more perseverance than other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that is the quality that would differentiate that from everyone else. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like every time I talk to someone about like what their journey, I mean, some people are lucky and like things work out without, you know, too many complications, but I've seen that like most of the time there's like some kind of complicated path that you have to go through to end up where you do end up. And I think it's hard because I feel like if I was in Ethiopia, I wouldn't have been as anxious about the whole thing. I think like you talked about, you know, you have to find a job within 60 days of graduation or you're illegal in this country, you know, like you have
right.
like you have to, so you have that timeline pressure of like I have to
Yeah.
find a job within, and
This.
like even so something else that was concerning for me was like I wanted to make sure that I couldn't find a position but here before I went back home, but then I was like, okay, I graduate and then I have like 60 days, like where am I going to get money to stay in the US for those 60 days and like look for a
Logistical
job?
questions. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So like who's gonna fund me for those like two months? Like where's the money gonna come from? Like where am I going to stay? So there's just so much uncertainty surrounding that also increases the anxiety. Like finding a job even for domestic students is a very anxiety ridden process. But I think for international students it's more so because, you know, we have nothing to fall back on in this country. Like if things don't work out, you know, you have to go home, which isn't a bad thing, honestly. Like I think that it's just you when you're in this system, you feel like you have to like make it's either here or like it's over for
But where
you,
else?
you know.
Right. Right.
But like that's not the case, and I think that, you know, just like being comfortable, like what's difficult is being comfortable in that environment of
Right.
uncertainty and like not knowing where you're going to end up. Like for me, even like a week before graduation, I did not know where I was going to be. Like it was that like I did not know what I was going to be doing, where I was going to be. So like being comfortable with that level of uncertainty is also something that's like, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like senior year, I think is one of the hardest years of college because you're not only trying to graduate with good grades, you're also trying to find a job on top of that, right? So
Yeah.
your time management skills are going to be put to the test, honestly. Because as you mentioned earlier, like it also takes time to sit down, craft an application, ask for recommendations. And speaking of recommendations, I want to also highlight the importance of like developing a really good relationship with your professors while you're still in school, right? Because I feel like even when you apply to grad school or when you apply to a job, you need someone to refer you to say that you are actually worthy of that position, right? So can we maybe talk a little bit about the importance of professors?
Oh, for sure. I think that like when we talked about networking, like professors are your other resources, right? We talked about the career center and like even for positions that are outside of academia, like your professors might have connections, they might know people. So if you are close to professors, it's like good to like go and talk to them. And I mean, being on the path that I am right now in graduate school, obviously like having built good connections with professors and like being comfortable asking them for recommendations and like trusting that they will say good things, or like hoping, I guess, that they would say
Of course they will, yeah, obviously.
that they would say good things about you. I think it's really important. And I think, you know, for me college was hard because I don't know if I was staying true to myself in terms of like the career path. Like even though I knew that some of these positions weren't really what I wanted, I still applied because of, you know, fear and like wanting to be able to stay here and like all of the stuff that we talked about. And I think towards the end, the path that I ended up on was the one that if I, you know, I actually really wanted to be on. So if I had just completely given up on academics, you know, I wouldn't be able to go into graduate school, and like just because everybody was, you know, going into finance or like tech, you know. And I think that it's really important to like figure out what it is that you actually want to do. And in college it might feel like there's only just like, as international students, one or two things that you can do because that's what everyone does. But like, you know, there are other opportunities available to you. And I think that yeah, it's hard to like leave that conventional path, but really looking inside and thinking about what you know, even long term, what kind of career path you want for yourself, and making sure that you're well set up for that. Like you are not sacrificing that in order to go into these other things that other people are doing, I think is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for saying that. And I feel like the struggle as an international student, obviously, as it is hard, but at the same time, when you're like trying to figure out what you want to do, there's so many options, there's so many opportunities, like you said, like finance, tech, research assistantship positions. Like there's so many things that are available. Sometimes it could feel so overwhelming because you don't know what to do, because of this, too many choices, right? So that's also a problem that you also might face. Going back to what I was saying earlier about like the importance of professors, for me personally, my professors, I developed relationships early on, right? Because thank God, I was very, very lucky to find an advisor and a mentor who was really, really supportive of my education, my career, and what I wanted to do afterwards. And she was actually the one who advocated for me when I did that internship, my junior year, the one in New York. The program administrators were like, oh, you have to pay this amount. So I ended up securing a scholarship for the stay, but they were like, no, you have to pay this upfront. So she literally had to call them and be like, you're missing out by not accepting this girl. Like she literally called them and said that. And then they changed their mind and they were like, okay, never mind. You don't have to, you can just come. And I was like, what? Like literally I could not believe it, right? So if I didn't have a mentor like that, if I didn't have an advocate for me like that, I wouldn't be able to have that internship, right? And the way that she felt comfortable talking like that about me is because I went to her office hours. We developed a personal close. So she became my really good advisor, and I feel like a lot of times maybe we might forget, to check up on our professors or go to office hours or, develop like some personal connections. And I feel like it goes a long way, right? So even after graduation, we still kept in touch and she's always like eager to know what I'm doing, right? So I feel like I'm very lucky to have that person in my life. And it was also because I did good in her classes, right? And I went to her office hours, and these things I feel like might seem like very little things, but they go a long way when you're applying to like a full-time position, right? So
no, I think like coming from Ethiopia, where the relationship that you have with your professors is more of like respect and like you don't
completely different, right?
like you don't refer to them with their first names.
No, of
Like
course
it's
not.
there's so much distance between like
Distance,
students,
yes.
and like professors. I think just like being comfortable in the environment here where you can go even like talk about personal things with your professors, and like you can actually get really close to your professors. I think it's not something that we are used to, but like you said, like they can be a really good resource for you regardless of what you end up doing down the line. I think it's just like being comfortable going, like you said, like going to their office hours, like reaching out to them if you're in a position where like you might even need help, because that's not how we're brought up. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. So is there any aspect of the job search process that we didn't discuss but you want to bring up?
I think we touched on most of it. I think something that I will say is that it can be very daunting and like very discouraging sometimes. So like talk to your other friends, talk to your family, and like just to make sure that you're like mentally okay to go through that. And
Mental health
like
is good.
and it's like even if it doesn't work out the way that you want it to work out, like it will be okay. Like we said, it's not the end of the world, and like things usually find a way of working out. But like just like give yourself some, what is it, grace, I
I'm
guess.
great.
And like it's hard, and just don't give up, and like keep trying, and something will work out, I think. Because for me especially, I wasn't used to so many rejections, constant rejections
Oh
from
my god. Yes. Yeah, that's so true.
so it's like just like get not letting that affect you, and like hope, trusting the process, and like keep doing what's expected from you, and with the hope that things will work out. I think is really important. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you so much for adding that, because I completely forgot about that. Like, you learn how to deal with rejections. Like, it's not even a joke, like, honestly, because you feel like, because I had a friend, by the way, who said like she's never been rejected to anything she applied to. I met her through work and I was like, what? Because for me, like, that was never the case. Like, honestly, I had to get used to like a lot of no's. But at the same time, you know, if one door closes, it's, you know, another door is going to open for you, right? So it's not rejection, it's redirection, right? To another, to another position. But yeah, like, you learn to be comfortable with getting rejections, and, you know, trying to take it with grace, as you said, and be kind to yourself. So I feel like those are like very, very important. And also like prioritizing your mental health. I mean, that's the first thing ever. Like, you have to make sure you're okay before you know, do something else. I mean, I feel like those are really good points.
And I also sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
And I also think that like trying not to like extrapolate too much from this, like some of these companies, the reasons that they reject you. So I remember in my senior year, like one of the roles that I eventually was rejected from was I had made it to the final round, and like it was actually in Chicago, funny enough.
Oh wow, you're there right now.
Right. But yeah, like I was flown here, and I thought the interviews went really well, but I like got an email saying they didn't like pick me for the position. And I think that was the first time where I actually sent an email and I was like, I just want to know what I did wrong, because that's the thing about these applications. Like, you don't even know what you did right or what you did wrong. You just receive a rejection, and you're sort of like, what am I going to change the next time that I do apply for the position? So I did that, and the response that I got was actually really interesting. They were like, we've reached the limit of international students that we can sponsor, and like we don't have room for like another person, and that's why. So I was like, if I hadn't done that, I would have probably thought, oh, you know, like maybe I did something in the interviews, and like really questioned like how that went for me. So yeah, I think that like understanding that sometimes, you know, the limitations that we talked about being an international student, that like might be the reason that you're not getting these positions. So yeah, like don't try and extrapolate too much and say, you know, like maybe I'm just not good enough to get these kinds of positions, or like maybe I'm not qualified enough and all of that.
Right. No, I think that's a very important point that you raised. And, you know, kudos for you for reaching out and saying, why didn't I get this position? Like, not a lot of people do that, by the way.
That was the only time. That was the only time.
And it did pay off, because you actually knew why you didn't get the position, and it wasn't anything about you. It was just the fact that they didn't have enough space. And I feel like that also obviously would really help other people, because as you said, you start questioning yourself and your worth, and you're like, whether or not you did something wrong. And, you know, it goes back to what we said earlier about like reaching out and asking for things. You know, it might seem very like out of the blue, or like, oh, this is not appropriate, or this is not formal, but at the end of the day, it's going to benefit you to know what you did wrong, right? So then you could regroup and re-strategize for the next position you're applying to, right? So I feel like that's a very good point. Thank you for raising that. So as we're ending our conversation, do you have any advice for current or prospective international students who are, or I guess it's not prospective, it has to be current, for current international students who are dealing with the job search process?
Yeah, I feel for you is one thing I want to say. I've been there. We've all been there.
Everyone.
But I think like the biggest takeaways from this conversation are, like we said, like networking. Like, don't just send applications on LinkedIn or like whatever website that you're using to apply. Like, reach out to people. Some of the resources we talked about, like your professors, your school's career centers. And also, like, even when you're using LinkedIn, I think there's an option where you can like use your connections, like students that have alumni from your school that you can like reach out to, send messages to, and say, you know, I'm really interested in this position. Can you refer me to it? And like, or like also just like sending messages to people and asking them to have conversations about the role that they have that you are interested in. I think that's also like a good way to be like, oh, you know, I'm not looking for a job, but I just want to know what you do. And I think like if they like you enough, they might recommend other positions. They might like refer you to other people. So like make sure you use the resources available to you through networking. Like, don't be discouraged. Like, everybody goes through it. Like, don't let the rejections get to you too much. And yeah, and like have faith in the process, and like things will work out.
Right. No, thank you so much for that. Honestly, I don't think I would add anything to that. I feel like I would second everything that you said. And honestly, I feel like the most important thing is to make sure that you are okay first, like, like you're doing well, you're healthy, and just take care of yourself first, and then the job search is like secondary. I feel like a lot of times we get so consumed with the idea of like trying to find a job because I have to stay in the US, right? And there are a lot of things that also stress you, like there's might be family stuff, or like your school stuff. So I feel like trying to just make sure you're sane first, that's the first step, and then like trying to look for a position that you're interested in, that you would enjoy doing, right? Not just because someone else is doing it, but just because you actually enjoy it, is really important. And at the end of the day, like, everyone's experience is different, everyone's path is different, and it's not going to look the same for you. So you're also like drawing your own story. Just like, me and you, we were both international students, but we have different stories to share, right? Even though we are both international students, I want to highlight the fact that everyone has their own experience, and to just be okay with like having your own path towards finding internships or job search process, right?
I agree.
Yeah. And with that, we end a wonderful conversation of the Internationalie podcast. Just a quick housekeeping. Please make sure to go follow the official Instagram page at Internationalie by Ruth, that is LIE, and send an email with your questions and concerns about being an international student to internationaliebyruth@gmail.com. Thank you so much for Sorenie for joining us today and for your time.
This was great. I'm glad we got to talk about this. I think it's a very important topic.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in today. I hope you have a lovely week ahead of you, and take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye.